Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches, where today I'm going to be talking about the 1970 British Cold War spy thriller, The Looking Glass War. And the film begins with a British intelligence agent being found dead. The man was carrying a roll of film containing photographs of the East German town of Kalkstadt. When that film mysteriously goes missing, British intelligence suspect that the East German secret police are trying to cover up the presence of a new rocket system in the Kalkstadt area. And a small cadre of British intelligence personnel hatch a plan to send a lone operative into East Germany, where he will retrieve the photographs and verify the rocket system's existence. The man they choose as this operative is the Polish defector, a man named Liza, who illegally entered the UK, subsequently got a British woman pregnant, and who, on being offered citizenship and thus the chance to stay in England with his child, cooperates and agrees to do this job. The new agent is put through a rapid course of self-defence and survival lessons at a safe house and taught how to use a portable radio transmitter to send coded messages. This is all very rushed given the circumstances, but it seems Liza has picked up at least some of the lessons, at least on escaping a tail, because he manages to slip away from his handlers to meet with his girlfriend. Liza becomes violently distraught when he learns that the woman has chosen to abort their baby. He decides to pull out of the mission, but after a night of drinking with one of the British agents, he changes his mind and elects to go ahead after all. Now, you might be thinking that sending a lone, unsupported, hastily trained, half-hearted agent beyond the Iron Curtain sounds like a recipe for disaster, and you'd have a point. Things go wrong with the mission pretty much from the start, and Liza is soon scrambling to stay alive, let alone to complete his mission. Now, The Looking Glass War is based on a 1965 John le Carré novel of the same name. Le Carré had worked for British intelligence, both MI5 and MI6, for 6 years while writing part-time, but after the success of his 1963 novel, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, and the betrayal of his intelligence cover by Kim Philby, he left the service to become a full-time author. Now, le Carré viewed espionage work as morally compromised and had intended that the message of The Spy Who Came In From the Cold be that, but audiences widely interpreted his protagonist, Alec Leamas, as a tragic hero. The Looking Glass War, then, was le Carré's response, explicitly a satire that was intended to underline what le Carré saw as the ultimate futility of intelligence work. The novel was poorly received by his British readers, though better liked in the US, where, it has to be said, British intelligence services were not generally well regarded at the time. Nonetheless, it was the British film industry that brought the story to the screen, albeit with some changes, with a largely British cast that includes a young Anthony Hopkins, as you may see on your screen. Most of the cast are talented actors, but I was not a fan of the movie. Let's talk about why. And the first reason is, all of the characters are awful people. The main character, Liza, is deeply unlikable, and that's before he beats up his British girlfriend for having an abortion. Violence will prove, in fact, to be Liza's first resort in most situations. This is not a man much given to subtlety or dialogue. He's also cynical and self-interested, to the point where his decision to continue the mission after the abortion felt rather unconvincing to me. And the other characters are almost all just as bad. With one exception, the British team who recruit Liza view him as entirely expendable. In that regard, Liza's lack of experience in intelligence work is a plus for them. He has in fact been chosen for the mission precisely because he doesn't have the background to understand just how much danger he's walking into. So basically, they're all jerks using a jerk for their own jerkish purposes. All of which makes it very hard to care about anyone who is on screen. And that's also a significant change from the book. In the novel, le Carré shows his cynicism about espionage by making the British team a bunch of dinosaurs, out-of-touch relics who are trying to reclaim the glory days of World War II, while not understanding the world has dramatically changed in the 20 years since the war ended. This includes the book's version of Liza. He's an older man there than in the film, a retired former operative living a humdrum life, and who sees the mission as a chance to feel useful again and relive his faded wartime glory. The British operatives in the film are much more cynical and callous, without even a sop toward this is for the good of the country. They pick an agent they consider disposable and deniable, and most of them deliberately conceal from him the extent of the risks he will be taking. The film's Liza, meanwhile, is a hot-headed youth with rather nebulous motivations for taking the mission, rather than a man past his prime and not yet ready to admit that fact. Now, these different character traits lead to many of the same outcomes as occur in the film, but I feel the flaws of the book's characters are easier to empathise with. Sure, they're selfish with their petty inter-service rivalries and their hunger to reclaim lost glories or prove themselves by earning their first glory, but at least personally, I think those motivations are a lot easier to sympathise with, identify with, than what we see in the film. There's some grubbiness to them, absolutely. That was Le Carré's thesis, after all, but not quite to the same extent as in the movie. Now, James Bond has an impact on this movie. He had exploded onto cinema screens in the early 1960s with Sean Connery performing the role in 5 successful movies. But Connery's 5th Bond film, You Only Live Twice, hadn't been quite the success of the 2 before it, and box office for the first Bond film without him, the 1969 offering On Her Majesty's Secret Service, was half that of You Only Live Twice. So perhaps the time seemed right to position a new man as the spy of the moment. Certainly, that's one possible reason for the filmmakers choosing to cast handsome young American Christopher Jones as Liza. Or perhaps it was simply their feeling that we need a hunk out front. In any case, it was apparently not a happy choice for the rest of the cast, who found Jones very hard to work with. Also, presumably because of Jones's American accent, all of his dialogue ended up being dubbed by someone else, which does make me wonder at the choice to cast an American in the first place. Despite having gone for a sexy leading man in the James Bond style, the film is in most other ways a very conscious rejection of Bond's glitzy, gadget-heavy adventure romps. Spying is depicted as a very prosaic and bureaucratic process, more protocols and rules than glamour and excitement, which doesn't really gel well with the casting of the lead. If you're going to have a, sexy feisty hunk as your lead, make a sexy feisty movie, maybe? Yeah, so The Looking Glass War follows unpleasant people with dubious motives in a story that doesn't fit the leading man. It's a bit of a baffling project all round, really, and I didn't find it much fun to watch. Next time, we're going to look at the 2008 Russian historical epic Alexander the Warrior Saint, about Prince Alexander of Novgorod's 1240 AD battle against Swedish forces near the river Neva. But that is next time. Until then, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've seen The Looking Glass War, let me know what you thought of it.